morning, good afternoon, good night, whenever you are listening to the pod. No need to waste time. We are jumping right into talking about one of the biggest trades in NBA history, in my opinion, the Giannis trade. And which team won the trade? For me, is both teams won this trade, to tell you the truth. The Heat were in a position where they needed to get a superstar in there post Jimmy Butler, post even LeBron. You can even say post LeBron. The whole era that Pat Riley has been a part of this team post LeBron has been him trying to form a championship team that can win another ring. And now he has that key superstar piece that he's been wanting to get this whole time. The Bucks are able to get back cap space, able to get back assets, able to get draft picks back in this trade. And I really think it ends up being a win for both teams. So we'll start with what the Bucks got back. The Bucks get back Tyler Herro, Kel'el Ware, Jaime Jaquez, Kasparas Giannis, a 2026 first, which is the number 13 pick in this year's draft. So now the Bucks have the 10th pick and the 13th pick in this year's draft, which is going on right now. I'm not going to look over and see what's going on with the draft because I don't want to distract myself. But and then on top of that, the Bucks get a 2031 and 2033 first round pick from the Heat, which is so far down the line, and a 2030 pick swap. But again, those picks, 2030, 2031, 2033, those could be highly, highly, highly valuable picks for the Bucks from the Heat. Whether or not Giannis succeeds with the Bucks, 2021 and 2033 are a long, long time from now. And we don't know what type of player Giannis is going to be in 5 years and 7 years from now. Let's think about different comparison. Let's think about the Kevin Garnett trade. How that worked out for the Celtics once he got traded to the Nets, yada, 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 all that. But it's not that players fall off a cliff, but those picks could be highly valuable to the Bucks, even if Giannis doesn't fall off a cliff, but just has some sort of fall off and the Heat aren't an elite form of contender at the point. Let's say the Bucks are contending by that period, by the 2031, 2033, 2030 period, then those picks are just extra valuable picks that the Bucks are going to get from the Heat at that point. So they get Tyler Herro back, they get Kel'el Ware back, they get Jaime Jaquez and Kasparas Giannis, who Tyler Herro is on, not an expiring, but is in the last year of his contract and would have to be extended. And same thing for Jaime Jaquez. He's in the last year of his contract and would have to be extended. But both of those contracts for those players wouldn't be huge contracts. And even if it comes to the offseason next year, I think there's scenarios where we could just have sign and trade options with those players and get more draft capital or assets back for those players. Then Kel'el Ware is someone who's this was his second year or third year in the league. It must be his second year because he'd be going into his expiring next year if it was his third year. Kel'el Ware, second year in the league. Kasparas, first year in the league. So those are two contracts that you get on cost-controlled contracts for the next basically 3 years at that point. 3 years for Kasparas and 2 years for Kel'el. And those are still two highly tradable players. Again, young assets that you can trade. So even though Jaylen Brown was the best player, the best piece in this for the Bucks to get, at the end of the day, Pat Riley, the Miami Heat, the Bucks, everyone, the Celtics were just a foil in this trade that has been brewing for so long between Miami and the Bucks, where Pat Riley was able to once again show how amazing of a GM he is, how amazing his front office is, everything, and be able to get the Celtics to put Jaylen Brown on the table and completely ruin the Celtics' chemistry. Whether or not the Celtics trade Jaylen Brown, their chemistry and the narrative is completely different surrounding the Celtics, a huge rival for the Miami Heat. And not only was Pat Riley able to do that, to create that divide among the Celtics, to get the Celtics to finally really put Jaylen Brown on the table. We've heard about him in talks for Kevin Durant and other players, but for them to really finally put him on the table, drew a line in the sand for the Celtics, for the Bucks, for the Heat, for every team to know that the Celtics were really trying to trade Jaylen Brown, and that also 100% rubbed Jaylen Brown the wrong way. And that's why we've had these reports about Jaylen Brown and how Windhorst is saying it's like almost inevitable, like not a sure thing, but he's pretty sure that Jaylen Brown is going to get traded. I mean, the Twitch stream that Jaylen Brown was on where he said like teams are going to regret, or people, whoever it is, whoever the person may be, is going to regret saying and doubting him, all that. So after these trades, though, we'll talk about Jaylen Brown in a second here. After these trades, the Heat roster now is Giannis, Bam, Norman Powell, who's an unrestricted free agent, and Andrew Wiggins, who has a $30 million player option. So we'll pause right there real quick. Giannis, Bam, Norman Powell, Wiggins. Norman Powell is a unrestricted free agent, and they need to renegotiate a contract with him and hope that he takes a team-friendly contract, or they're just going to lose him for nothing, and they open up about $25 million in cap space, potentially, maybe a little bit less. It depends on what Powell's, no, not even that much, because Powell's contract was 90 for 5 was his contract. So Even if Powell opts out and goes out into the open market, that only opens up $15 million of cap space for them. And what they also need to happen, they need Andrew Wiggins to opt out of that player option and again sign to a team-friendly contract at a lower price. If Wiggins is going to opt in for $30 million, that doesn't give them a lot of flexibility, especially right now where after the trade, the Heat are already a team who's over the first apron and only has $18 million in cap space to fill out 4 spots on this team. So the roster right now, in terms of players who are locked in besides Powell and Wiggins, who are up in the air right now with free agency, is Giannis, Bam, Bobby Portis, Davion Mitchell, Pelle Larsson, Nikola Jovic, and Drew Smith. And I was shocked to find out that Nikola Jovic got like a 4-year, $60 million contract from the Heat. So what that does in terms of benefit, though, for the Heat, if they're able to package some other players in like a Drew Smith or a Pelle Larsson with a Nikola Jovic, then they can bring in a much more formidable player in there for the price and for the players that they're offering. When you combine the salary, when you combine the talent that they'd be able to offer, they might be able to bring someone in who won't be a third scoring option possibly, or even like that second option, but just someone who is at least a piece and gives them a little bit more cap flexibility in that sense too. So this version of the Heat team is not perfect. It's not, people when they say, I've heard people say, oh, now the Heat are built to contend. Right now, the Heat are not built to contend with this current roster. Even if they bring back Powell and Wiggins, I don't think they're the best team in the Eastern Conference by any means. Are they better than the Celtics as currently constructed right now, as the Knicks as currently constructed right now? Even the Pistons, I think you could put the Pistons roster up against the Heat right now. I don't think there's that much of a gap between the Heat, the Pistons, other teams in the Eastern Conference right now after the Giannis trade until we see what happens with the Heat. So now let's go into the Bucks and what their roster looks like post-trade, what their cap looks like post-trade. We'll get into the picks at another point because they need to get their picks back from other teams first before we really fully talk about the picks that they have. But their roster right now, they have so much cap flexibility. They have a lot of players that they can also trade too. They don't have to keep any of these players. They're not locked in to contending long-term. I don't think anyone in Milwaukee is saying to themselves as a fan that it's a disaster if this Milwaukee team doesn't win a championship with Tyler Herro. They know the ceiling of Tyler Herro and Miles Turner and these other players and know where it's going. So you look at the Bucks roster, they now have Tyler Herro, Kasparis, Kel'el Ware, Ryan Rollins, AJ Green, Jaime Jaquez, Miles Turner, Kuzma. You were in a terrible, terrible position having to trade Giannis. And have you put yourself in a great position? No. But with the way the NBA is structured now, with the aprons, with the salary cap, with everything, with the way picks work, all the things that are structured in the NBA now, you have put yourself in a position where you can really, really make moves. You have Tyler Herro, you can make a move with him. You have Kasparis, you have Ware. There's a great young pieces. Ryan Rollins showed flashes last year and showed us the potential he has, not as a lead guard, but as like potentially a 6th or 7th man on a championship team. AJ Green, super cheap contract. You can trade that. Jaime Jaquez, if you can relock him back up on a contract, this is someone who had a huge year last year for the Heat and a resurgence year. Miles Turner, a player who was a key part of a team that was in the finals. And if you can get someone who can bet on him, you can get draft capital back for him too. Kuzma, who on an expiring contract, you can get a team to buy into that, especially if you're going to take some of that money back. And Kel'el Ware is someone who was just hidden behind Bam Adebayo and was never trusted by the Heat staff. And I think is really, really going to shine for the Bucks. So now the Bucks cleared $20 million in cap space. They have $32 million in cap space right now and also opened up a $25 million tax player exception. So back to the point about I understand that the Bucks lost Giannis, the Heat got Giannis, but this trade at the end of the day is a win-win for both teams based off what both teams got in the position that both teams were in. So now let's move on to Jaylen Brown and what happens with him post-Giannis trade and the ramifications of that and all those things. So part of why I think the Bucks kind of got cold feet with Jaylen Brown too, something I forgot about. So he is owed another 3 years at like $260 million. I want to say it all depends on incentives, everything else, but his full contract on top of extension. So if he adds the 2-year extension he's eligible for on top of these next 3 years, his contract will end up being 5 years for $335 million. And I love Jaylen Brown as a player, but I don't think there is any team in the NBA who wants to pay Jaylen Brown 5 years of $335 million over the next 5 years, which equates to $67 million per year. And that is pre-incentives as well. He has incentives built into his contract where if he makes all NBA teams, all these certain incentives, it boosts up that money even more. And I think that's why the Celtics were also jumping at the opportunity to try to trade him for Giannis, is because Giannis only makes like 57, 58 in his contract. And even on the extension, Giannis's contract extension, if he opts out, his extension would be 4 for 274. If Giannis opts in, his extension would be 3 for 210, which is still not anywhere close to the $335 million commitment you would be giving to Jaylen Brown. And I think that is part of the problem why the Bucks got cold feet and why they wanted the Celtics to throw in Hugo and Baylor Shireman on top of those 2 first-round picks that the Celtics were going to throw in. So if I had any potential Jaylen Brown trade for you guys, I would give him out, but I'm not 100% sure, and I don't just want to say hearsay out there, but something that I could see happening is like a Jaylen Brown for Trey Murphy and other stuff swaps that give the Celtics more cap flexibility, where if they get Trey Murphy back, Trey Murphy was on what he signed, was a 5 for 150 contract, so it's $30 million a year. And I'm sure they would take back another player in that, take back picks, something along those lines. But if Jaylen Brown does get traded now, there is no player on the market that is even close to Giannis, and whatever haul, per se, the Celtics get back is going to be insanely disappointing to Celtics fan for the finals MVP Jaylen Brown. So moving on to Julius Randle and what equated to a salary dump by Minnesota, and what has been a long line of stupid moves by Minnesota where they either don't make a move or try to make a crazy move and fall flat on their face. So we'll talk about this trade first. So Randle gets traded to the Nets in what is essentially just a straight up salary dump. They send Randle to the Nets, give up the 28th pick, get the 33rd pick back, and help facilitate the Bulls somehow getting Nick Claxton in this too. It just, at the end of the day, it makes no sense beyond that this was just a pure salary dump for Minnesota, in the same way that I really thought Julius Randle and Dante, I'm like, you're getting 2 players for 1 with Cat. And we saw what Cat did in Minnesota. I really thought that was a great trade. But in reality, regardless of the trade, regardless of the players, you realize at the end of the day, that was nothing but a salary dump for Minnesota, trading Cat away the same way it was trading Julius Randle away, where they didn't care what they got back as long as they had cap flexibility and cap space. And what did they do with that cap space? They ended up extending Ayo Dosunmu for 5 years and I believe it was $112 million. I don't have it written down off the top of my head, but I believe it was 5 for 112. And use that cap space to sign Ayo Dosunmu for 5 years and $112 million. So after this move again that you made for the Timberwolves, now your roster looks like what? You have Anthony Edwards, Jaden McDaniels, Ayo Dosunmu, Rudy Gobert, Dante DiVincenzo, who's coming off an Achilles injury. I can't even think of who else they have on the team off the top of my head. Terrence Sharon Jr., Yoan Behringer, who they claim is untouchable, and Timberwolves fans talk about like the second coming of Jesus. But the position the Timberwolves are in right now, they have put themselves in a position to do nothing but lose Anthony Edwards in free agency or to a trade. If I'm Anthony Edwards, why would I ever sign back to this team? This organization who claims Jaden McDaniels is untouchable, and Timberwolves fans were telling me, oh, well, Anthony Edwards loves Jaden McDaniels. I don't care if Anthony Edwards and Jaden McDaniels are best friends and they play Call of Duty together every single night, 2K every single night. You're telling me Anthony Edwards would not be more than ecstatic if Jaden McDaniels got traded for Giannis. And meanwhile, the Timberwolves are out here putting reports out saying that Jaden McDaniels was untouchable in negotiations for Giannis. And that just shows you how pitiful of an organization the Timberwolves are right now under this A-Rod ownership, under whatever this ownership is. They have no intentions of contending if it means them spending any money. And this salary dump right here showed us this, along with what is the big swing that they took when they traded 2 first-round picks to San Antonio to move up in the draft. They wanted to take a cost-controlled player in Rob Dillingham, a guard, who they thought was probably an insurance policy to Ant as well, and ended up being nothing but a piece to get flipped in the trade for Ayo Dosunmu, and ended up doing nothing for Minnesota. And now the Timberwolves got the Spurs got a first-round pick from Minnesota for that, and also have a first-round pick in 2030, a pick swap from Minnesota for that as well. So God forbid, again, Anthony Edwards leaves Minnesota, that 2030 pick swap the Spurs have could be like a top 5 or at the least a lottery pick if Anthony Edwards is gone. And another trade where the Timberwolves gave a first-round picks, obviously the Rudy Gobert trade. That's a whole other discussion about how you feel about Rudy Gobert and his impact on the Timberwolves, how good he's been. They also gave up first-round picks to trade for Nickeil Alexander Walker, and then never matched the contract when he went to restricted free agency. They let him walk to the Hawks and didn't match the offer. So just piss poor management by the Timberwolves as an organization nonstop, and it's going to bite them in the ass when they have lost Karl Anthony Towns, when they have lost Jimmy Butler, and now they're going to also lose Anthony Edwards. So 3 things that I want to talk about before we get out of here. I am ripping through this episode, 15 minutes. 3 things I want to talk about before we get out of here. The Kings are going to waive DeMar DeRozan and stretch his contract. He has 1 year left, and they can basically pay him $10 million guaranteed for that last year and not have to worry about having him on the books and allow him to go somewhere. So 2 teams to look out for DeRozan. I would say the Clippers would be one team, obviously the LA connection, and they need a backup wing in that sense, and Miami as well with Giannis now, especially if Powell walks or even if Wiggins opts into that $30 million as well. If they can get DeRozan to come in there on a cheap contract, that would be huge for Miami. Bring in an NBA veteran who averaged 18 points a game and 4 assists last year on pretty good shooting numbers. I think you really can't go wrong with that. And then the Blazers hire away Micah Nori from the Timberwolves, and Micah Nori is an offensive mastermind. If you have the time of day, just look into Micah Nori, look up his history as a coach. He's one of the smartest offensive minds in the NBA, and I think that is a great hire by a team in the Blazers, who are a terribly cheap organization, but that is another story for another day. But the Blazers, that is a great hire by them. And same thing with Dusty May for the Mavs. I think that's a phenomenal hire by the Mavs, getting Dusty May in there. I think Dusty May is a great coach, the Michigan coach, and bringing a player in there for Cooper Flagg, who isn't like actually too NBA centric, I think is a good thing. You bring in a player who has who has a bit of that college experience and kind of relate to Cooper, where they're both going to be learning what it's like to be in the NBA. Dusty May doesn't have any NBA experience, and Cooper Flagg only has 1 year of NBA experience. And I think that will actually be something that is good for them, in the same way that it was good when Brad Stevens was coming up with those young Celtics players, and he didn't have much any NBA experience himself, was never a player, was never an NBA coach before he got in the league. And I think that was actually a crucial part of how the Celtics developed. Those two could grow together instead of butting heads. So again, Dusty May, great hire by the Mavs in my opinion. And then the Trae Young extension for the Wizards. What was it? 4 years for 210? 5? I believe it was 4 for 200. 4 for 210. That is insanity. Like the way that contract ages, it might be better a couple years from now when players make more money. And sure, Trae Young will be the 30th highest paid player in the league instead of like the 10th. But there is no world where you need to give a guard who can't play defense and is an inconsistent shooter that much money. I don't know what negotiation was going on between Trae Young and the Wizards. Trae Young's agent is his father, but whatever was going on there, just all-time fleecing by Trae Young and his agents. And if you're the Wizards, now you have formed a team of what? You have DeBansta, you have Trae Young, you have Anthony Davis, you have who? Baya Coulibaly. You don't have anybody. My God, I'm trying to think of players off the top of my head, but I really can't think of anyone. Keyshawn George. Who do you have as a team? And you've now committed to Trae Young. So at best, Trae Young ends up being like the 3rd option on a championship team potentially for you, which is like a 2nd-round exit for the Wizards at best. Or what's going to end up happening, you're going to end up trading him for a poo-poo platter of players and maybe a pick or two just to get off of that contract. So in my head, just a bonehead decision by the Wizards, something you didn't have to do. And maybe it was just something where I said, hey, we just want to fill out the salary cap. We don't have to bring in some other player to fill out the cap. We can bring in Trae Young. We know he's going to get assists, blah, blah, blah. But Trae Young is one of the most heliocentric players in the NBA, one of the biggest defensive minuses in the NBA, and there is no world where you need to pay him that amount of money ever. You could have offered him 4 for 120, and I promise you, there was no other team on the open market that was going to give Trae Young more than like 4 for 150, 4 for 160 at the max. And instead, you just gave this guy generational wealth times 12. And for what? So that'll do it for today's pod. Thank you guys for listening. Keep following on TikTok, Instagram, @FromTheBenchBasketball. At this point, you know the handle, you know the pages, everything like that. So thank you guys for all the support. I appreciate you guys listening. I can't talk. I'm sorry. It's been such a long day, long week. Been working my ass off. Can't even talk, and I had to record this pod. And I hope you guys are doing good. I'll talk to you guys soon. Have a good morning, good afternoon, good night, and bye-bye.